Why does happiness slip away the moment you finally touch it? Why can a victory feel so bright one day and so hollow the next? Why does stress linger longer than joy and criticism echo louder than praise? And if your brain was truly built for happiness, then why does it seem more skilled at blocking it than letting it in? Tonight, here at Neuro Academy, we'll explore the hidden science of happiness, not as a permanent state, but as a fragile spark. We'll uncover why your brain scans for threats more than joy, why dopamine keeps you chasing the next thing without letting you rest, and why satisfaction fades faster than it arrives. But here's the existential question. If your own brain is wired to block lasting happiness, then is happiness even a goal we were meant to reach? To help you hold on to these insights, I've prepared a free practical guide with a clear summary of tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to whenever you need it. Stay with me as we step into the shocking science of why your brain blocks happiness. You finally cross the finish line. The goal that once felt distant is now behind you. Your chest lifts, colors sharpen, time widens, but the brightness soon thins. Joy doesn't vanish in a crash because biology hates cliffs. It slips like water through cupped hands. Therefore you look around wondering why victory won't stay. This strange emptiness isn't failure of character but design. Deep in your skull, chemistry evolved to keep you alive because survival, not contentment, paid the bills of ancestry. Lingering too long in satisfaction once meant missed threats. Therefore your brain trades lasting bliss for vigilance. Picture an inner compass. It can point briefly to joy, but it tilts back toward restlessness because motion kept your lineage safe. The compass isn't broken, it's faithful to its job. Therefore modern life's request for steady peace collides with ancient code. Scientists call this hedonic adaptation. Thrills fade because the system resets to baseline. You buy the thing, and the thrill drains in days. A new home dazzles, but boxes empty, and the feeling levels. Romance surges, therefore daily rhythm returns. Peaks recede because the brain normalizes gains. Think of a theater. Front row you basks under a spotlight, but backstage hands are already dimming lights, because the next scene must be prepared. Your love for the show doesn't matter to the crew. Their script says reset, therefore delight yields to neutral. The fade carries a paradox. If joy stuck forever after one win, striving would stall. Because your ancestors couldn't retire after one meal, you inherited a bias toward what's next. Therefore you keep scanning, even when storms have turned into office calendars. You live between two worlds, biology that insists on dissatisfaction to ensure survival, and a heart that longs for rest. The hollow after success isn't absence of joy but evolution's whisper, move. Does that make happiness an illusion? Not exactly, because the system is adjustable, even if it isn't built for permanence. Therefore, the question shifts from, how do I keep the peak, to how do I work with the mechanism that trims it? Notice the texture of the calm down. Sometimes it's jittery, sometimes bored, sometimes afraid, because your nervous system is recalibrating baseline. Most of life unfolds there, therefore not on mountaintops or in valleys, but along the middle path where meaning must be built. Philosophers have warned that chasing pleasure is a treadmill, but they also hint at a gift. Fading grants value because scarcity sharpens appreciation. If every sunrise lasted forever, therefore no sunrise would move you. Here, science meets reflection. The brain lets happiness slip because prediction updates and novelty wanes. Therefore joy must be cultivated in the process, not captured at the peak. The art isn't trapping a butterfly, but walking with it, knowing it will lift off and return. But one riddle remains. If survival explains the fade of joy, why do sadness, fear and regret linger longer than delight? They cling because the system weights threat over comfort. Therefore, to understand happiness, we have to uncover the mind's deeper bias toward the negative. Imagine standing on a shoreline as waves roll endlessly toward you. Some are small, others large, but none of them ever stop. That is the rhythm of your mind. The wave of happiness comes, lifts you for a moment, and then slides back into the ocean. What replaces it is not stillness but the pull of the next wave, alertness, readiness, unease. This rhythm is not a flaw in you, it is the legacy of survival. Your brain, in its most ancient form, was never built to keep you in continuous bliss. Instead, it was sculpted by millions of years of danger. For early humans, satisfaction was fleeting, because to remain in joy too long was to risk death. A full belly after a hunt was pleasant, but it had to give way quickly to the question, what if food runs out tomorrow? A safe fire warmed the night, but the mind whispered, what if the flames die while predators circle? In every joy, the shadow of threat. This is why neuroscientists often say that the default state of the brain is not contentment, but vigilance. Even when you sit quietly, your mind scans, subtle, restless, alert. It is like a guard at the city gate, who never truly relaxes, whose eyes keep sweeping the horizon for trouble. In today's world, those threats may no longer be lions or storms, yet your brain treats deadlines, unanswered messages, or subtle social tensions with the same gravity. The architecture has not changed, only the scenery has. Consider the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure buried deep within your brain. Though silent most of the time, it is wired like an alarm bell. Its sensitivity is remarkable. It can respond to a shadow that turns out to be harmless, a sound that ends up being nothing more than wind. This hair trigger system kept your ancestors alive, but it also means your inner world is tilted toward caution rather than peace. Think of your mind as a village designed in harsh terrain. Its walls are high, its watchtowers always manned. Joy may walk into the village as a welcome guest, but it is never allowed to stay long. The gates are built to close quickly, not to keep them open. And yet, this design raises a haunting question. If happiness is not natural, what is? The answer seems to be survival, alertness, readiness, constant assessment of the environment. Your body's chemistry echoes this. Stress hormones like cortisol, though unpleasant to feel, once gave your ancestors the energy to flee or fight. Even today, small doses sharpen your awareness, quicken your response, and prepare you for challenge. Happiness, on the other hand, does not protect you from danger. It makes you relax, it softens your vigilance, and so the brain, ever loyal to survival, allows it in short bursts only. But here lies the paradox. The very thing that kept our ancestors alive may now keep us from feeling fully alive. You live in a world where your survival is less often threatened, yet your brain continues to act as if every joy must be temporary, every calm must be interrupted. It is like inheriting armor you no longer need but cannot take off. This tension gives birth to many of the dilemmas of modern life. You work hard to secure comfort, yet rarely feel at rest within it. You long for peace, yet your own nervous system stirs against it. You wish for happiness to last, but your biology insists on movement. The contrast is not personal failure, it is the echo of a very old design. Think about this in your own life. How many times have you looked forward to a weekend, a holiday, a break, believing it would finally give you rest? And yet, during that very pause, your mind stirs. You check your phone, you remember tasks unfinished, you begin planning what comes after. The survival brain does not recognize the concept of enough. It always looks forward, scanning for risk, for opportunity, for what might go wrong. Philosophers once asked whether humans are condemned to restlessness. One ancient thinker compared us to boats tossed endlessly on waves, never at complete stillness, always carried by the current of desire and fear. And in a sense, modern neuroscience agrees. The normal state of the mind is not contentment but motion, not joy but search. But what does this mean for you here and now? It means that if you wait for happiness to simply settle and stay, you may wait forever. Joy was not designed to be permanent, vigilance was, and yet understanding this frees you, because once you see that your dissatisfaction is not a personal failure, but a feature of your wiring, you can begin to ask a different question, not why am I never happy enough, but how can I live gracefully with a mind built for survival rather than joy? The answer to that lies in understanding the subtle tricks of your biology, tricks that go beyond vigilance into something even stranger. For not only does the brain let happiness slip away, it also plays a deeper game. It adapts, it normalizes, it turns even the greatest victories into ordinary days. That adaptation, as you will see, is the mechanism that keeps you running endlessly forward, never satisfied with where you stand. Picture the first time you held a new phone in your hand. The smooth surface glowed, its edges sharp and clean, the world of possibilities just beneath your fingertips. You admired the weight of it, the speed of it, the promise that life would somehow feel better because of it. For days, even weeks, you felt a spark each time you picked it up. But slowly, almost invisibly, the thrill faded, the phone became ordinary, the extraordinary became routine. What once felt like treasure now feels like just another tool in your pocket. This is the silent rhythm of your brain, adaptation. No matter how dazzling the prize, no matter how hard you worked for it, your mind gently pulls it into the realm of the ordinary. The initial rush of delight fades, and what remains is a neutral baseline, waiting again for the next source of excitement. Scientists refer to this cycle as the hedonic treadmill, but think of it more simply as a moving walkway in an airport. At first, stepping onto it feels like progress. You glide effortlessly, feeling carried forward. Yet after a moment, the sensation fades. You are still moving, but you feel still. To feel progress again, you must walk faster, push harder, seek more. The treadmill never stops. It only asks for more energy, more effort, more desire. Inside your brain, one of the key players in this treadmill is dopamine, often called the molecule of reward. It is less about the joy of receiving and more about the hunger of seeking. When you imagine a reward, dopamine surges, urging you toward it. When you achieve it, dopamine quickly retreats, leaving you restless once more. Your biology pushes you not to hold on to joy, but to chase the next spark. Think of dopamine as a horizon. No matter how many steps you take, the horizon moves forward with you. You can never quite reach it, because the act of moving is its purpose. It keeps you striving, exploring, building. It is a survival advantage to always want more. More food, more shelter, more status. But in the modern world, this same drive can leave you feeling that nothing is ever enough. Consider relationships. The first months of love are electric. Every glance, every word feels radiant, magnified by the chemistry of novelty. Yet as time passes, the brain adjusts, the surges calm, the extraordinary becomes the everyday. This does not mean love disappears. It means the initial high cannot be permanent. To sustain connection, a deeper kind of bond must emerge, one not driven by dopamine's restless fire, but by gentler chemicals that foster trust and belonging. We will return to those later. The treadmill explains why promotions, purchases, and achievements rarely satisfy for long. Each success moves you forward, yes, but your brain adjusts quickly, calling it normal, erasing the glow. Like sandcastles built too close to the tide, joy dissolves with each wave of adaptation. But here is the philosophical weight of this truth. If your brain always adapts, is happiness doomed to fade? Or can adaptation itself be a gift? Imagine if joy never faded. If every bite of food, every new possession, every achievement kept burning with the same intensity forever. Would you ever move on? Would you ever grow? The fading, painful as it feels, may be what allows you to seek meaning beyond immediate pleasure. There is an ancient story of a king who asked a wise man to create a ring that would keep him grounded through both triumph and despair. The ring bore an inscription, "This too shall pass." What the king discovered is what your brain demonstrates every day. Happiness passes, sadness passes. The brain adapts, weaving all states back toward the middle. It is not mercy, nor cruelty, it is balance. And yet, balance can feel like emptiness. You run on the treadmill of life, expecting to arrive somewhere, and instead you find yourself in motion without destination. The treadmill whispers, chase more, earn more, love more, buy more. But when the thrill fades again, you wonder if you are running in place. This is the hidden paradox of adaptation. It protects you from stagnation, but traps you in restlessness. It ensures you survive, but leaves you yearning. To understand this paradox fully, you must look closer at the biases that shape how you see the world, the shadows in your perception that make joy harder to hold than sorrow. Because the truth is, your brain does not treat all experiences equally. It gives more weight to danger than to safety, more focus to pain than to pleasure. This imbalance is not accidental. It is the next layer of the story, the deeper reason why joy slips so easily, while fear and worry cling. Think about a single word of criticism you've received. Maybe it was years ago, a teacher doubting your abilities, a friend making a sharp remark, a stranger pointing out a flaw. That moment lingers. You can still hear the tone, still feel the sting. Now compare it with the dozens, maybe hundreds of compliments you've been given in your lifetime. Can you recall them as vividly? Do they echo in your mind the same way? This is the negativity bias, the tendency of your brain to give far greater importance to bad experiences than to good ones, and it makes sense once you understand the logic of survival. For your ancestors, failing to notice a ripe fruit was inconvenient, but failing to notice a predator's shadow was deadly. Over millennia, the mind learned to highlight danger in bold colors and let safety fade into softer tones. In your brain, structures like the amygdala respond to negative information with heightened sensitivity. They fire more rapidly, store more deeply, and recruit more of your attention. A single insult can dominate your inner landscape, while a kind gesture often slips away unnoticed. It's as if the mind were a painter with two palettes, bright, sticky colors for threats, pale watercolors for joy. Fear adds another distortion. The brain is prone to magnifying threats, turning small risks into looming shadows. A worry about a conversation tomorrow can feel as heavy as if it were happening now. A single uncertain look from someone you care about can spiral into imagined rejection. This fear bias kept your ancestors cautious, alert to even the faintest signal of danger. But in your modern life, it often creates storms where there are only clouds. And then there is the social comparison instinct. Picture a group of early humans around a fire. Those who noticed their lower rank, their fewer resources, their weaker alliances were the ones most likely to act, to gather more, to strengthen ties, to secure safety. Comparison was not about vanity, it was about survival. But today, in a world of constant exposure to others' lives, on screens, in cities, in workplaces, the comparison never stops. Your brain continues to measure your place in the tribe, even though the tribe has become billions of strangers. The result of these biases is simple but powerful. Your mind is tilted toward dissatisfaction. Joy is quieter, subtler, easily washed away. Fear is loud, sticky, unforgettable. Even when life is safe, your inner world vibrates with tension, because your brain keeps asking the same ancient questions. Am I safe? Am I enough? Do I belong? Think of it as carrying two bags. One bag holds joyful moments, but it is made of thin cloth and memories slip through. The other bag holds painful moments, but it is stitched from iron and nothing escapes. This imbalance explains why a single argument can outweigh a week of peace, why a setback can feel more real than 100 small victories. Philosophically, this imbalance forces us to question what it means to live well. If our brains are tuned to remember pain more than joy, does that mean happiness is always at a disadvantage? Or does it mean happiness requires more intention, more effort, more cultivation? Perhaps joy is not meant to be given but to be crafted, like a fragile garden that must be tended against weeds. And yet, there is also beauty in this bias, because while it brings suffering, it also brings awareness. The vigilance that sharpens fear also sharpens meaning. The same mind that remembers a wound for decades can also remember a kindness, if we choose to water it. The same brain that magnifies danger can also magnify gratitude when trained. The bias is not destiny, it is clay that can be shaped. Still, before you can shape it, you must see it clearly. Your joy fades not only because of adaptation, but because of this built-in tilt toward threat. Your brain was designed to notice danger more than comfort, lack more than abundance, fear more than peace, and until you acknowledge this tilt, you cannot begin to balance it. But knowing the bias leads us to another mystery. If negative moments grip your memory so tightly, then how exactly does your mind store and distort experiences of happiness? Why is it that even when you look back at joy, it feels different from what it was in the moment? That question brings us to the strange partnership between memory and expectation, the forces that shape not just what you feel now, but how you remember feeling in the past. Quick pause. So far, your brain adapts fast, hedonic treadmill, and dopamine drives the chase, not the having, therefore peaks fade by design. Next, why your mind weighs threat, joy, negativity, bias. Close your eyes for a moment and think of a time you were happy. Perhaps it was a celebration, a sunset shared with someone you love, or the quiet triumph of finishing something important. Notice how the memory feels. It may glow with warmth, but if you look closely, you realize it doesn't feel quite the same as when it actually happened. The sharpness is dulled, the colors softened, the emotions reshaped. Your brain has not preserved the moment like a photograph, it has painted over it, retouching details, brightening some, fading others. This is one of the quiet tricks of your mind. Memory does not store happiness with the same weight as pain. The amygdala, that almond-shaped sentinel, records threats in bold ink but writes joy in pencil. The moments of fear or hurt are carved deep, ready to be recalled in an instant. Meanwhile, happiness is more fleeting, more fragile, slipping into a haze. That is why, when you think back, your most vivid recollections often lean toward hardship. It was never that your life lacked joy, it was that your brain did not cling to it. Expectations add another twist. When you anticipate the future, you tend to imagine it brighter than it will be. A holiday seems flawless in your mind, a goal feels life-changing, a purchase seems transformative, but reality, when it arrives, can rarely match the clarity of the fantasy. The brain's imagination has painted the future in richer colors than reality can provide, and so, when the event comes, disappointment creeps in, not because the moment is bad, but because your mind oversold it. Think of it like a theater once more. When you imagine the future, the stage is lit with golden light, the actors perfect, the script seamless. When reality arrives, the spotlight reveals cracks in the set, the actors stumble, the lines falter, what you expected and what you lived rarely match, and the gap between them becomes fertile ground for disappointment. One striking discovery from psychology is that your brain even distorts how happy you remember being. People asked to recall their vacations often describe them as more joyous than they felt in the moment, or in other cases less. The memory is reshaped not only by what truly happened, but by the stories you told yourself afterward. It is as if your mind were not recording reality, but writing a novel loosely inspired by it. This distortion creates a cycle. You remember happiness as incomplete, so you chase the next source. You imagine future joy as larger than life, so you step into it only to find it less dazzling than expected. And because your brain favors remembering pain more vividly, the balance tips further. It is little wonder that people often feel their lives are less joyful than they truly are. The filter is not neutral, it is biased. Philosophically, this truth carries weight. It means that happiness is not only fragile in the present, it is fragile in the past and in the future. It is altered by memory, exaggerated by imagination, muted by expectation. What you call happiness may never be what you lived, but what your brain allows you to believe you lived. Yet there is a gift hidden here as well. If your mind can distort joy downward, it can also shape it upward. Gratitude, reflection, and storytelling can reframe memories, amplifying the light instead of the shadow. By choosing how you revisit the past, you can adjust what the brain highlights. Memory may not be a photograph, but it is a canvas, and canvases can be painted again. But even if you learn to reshape your memories, another puzzle remains. Why is it that even when you succeed, when you achieve the dream, when you win the prize, the emptiness still returns? Why does the moment of triumph so often dissolve into a strange question, and now what? That question opens the next door in our journey, where we explore why success, despite all the promises of culture and society, so often fails to deliver the peace it seems to guarantee. Imagine a climber reaching the summit of a mountain. The ascent has taken months of training, countless hours of strain, and the sheer determination to endure pain. At the top, the world opens beneath their feet, vast and breathtaking. For a moment, their heart fills with triumph, but soon, sometimes within minutes, an unsettling thought intrudes. What now? The very peak that was supposed to bring lasting satisfaction instead ushers in a quiet emptiness. This pattern echoes across every domain of life. The graduation ceremony that promised to feel like the pinnacle is over in a flash, leaving you staring at a future full of uncertainties. The new job once coveted quickly becomes routine. The relationship once intoxicating demands the everyday work of coexistence. Even great victories carry with them the weight of anticlimax. The secret lies in the dance of your brain's chemicals. Dopamine, the restless signal of pursuit, fuels your journey up the mountain. Each step closer to the goal lights the circuits of motivation. But dopamine is fickle. It falls sharply once the goal is achieved. Like a firework that dazzles for seconds before vanishing, its glow leaves behind the dark of the sky. This crash explains why success often feels strangely hollow. But happiness is not built by dopamine alone. Other messengers, serotonin and oxytocin, play subtler, longer melodies. Serotonin is linked to calm, to a sense of stability and meaning. Oxytocin, often called the bonding chemical, arises from trust, closeness, and human connection. These are not fireworks but hearth fires, steady, warm, sustaining. Success achieved in isolation, without connection or deeper purpose, struggles to produce these gentler, lasting forms of well-being. This is why so many who seem to have it all, wealth, recognition, achievement, confess to feeling unfulfilled. The dopamine peaks that carried them to success inevitably decline, and if serotonin and oxytocin are absent, the result is emptiness. Money, fame, or accolades can magnify life, but they cannot substitute for the quiet chemical foundations of belonging and meaning. Think of it as building a house. Dopamine lays the scaffolding, driving you to create, to climb, to conquer. But once the scaffolding is removed, only the walls remain. If those walls are not reinforced by connection, trust, and a sense of purpose, the house feels hollow. This is why a single shared laugh with a loved one can outweigh a solitary trophy, why an ordinary meal with family can feel richer than the most expensive feast eaten alone. Philosophers have long reflected on this paradox. Some wrote that the pursuit of glory is a mirage, that the further one chases it, the more it recedes. Others warned that achievements without virtue or community bring only restlessness. Modern neuroscience gives these ancient warnings a biological foundation. Your brain itself ensures that achievement cannot provide steady fulfillment unless paired with connection and meaning. And so, when you look at the unhappiness of those who appear to have everything, it is not hypocrisy or mystery, it is biology. Their dopamine has done its work and retreated. Without the quiet embrace of serotonin and oxytocin, the summit becomes just another place to feel alone. This realization can be unsettling, but it is also liberating. It suggests that happiness was never meant to be stored in external victories. It is not the summit that matters most, but the web of ties that hold you on the way up, and the fire that warms you when the climb is done. Success without connection is a shell. Success without meaning is an echo. But there is still one more secret hidden in your brain's chemistry, one that feels almost cruel. It is that your mind often rewards you more in the imagining of success than in its achievement. That anticipation, that thrill of almost there, can create a greater surge of pleasure than the arrival itself. And if this is true, it means that happiness is not only fleeting, but built to vanish as soon as you grasp it. Picture yourself standing in line at a bakery. The scent of warm bread drifts through the air. Your mouth waters, and anticipation builds with every step closer to the counter. In that moment, before you take the first bite, your brain is alight with promise. The reward feels almost within reach, and the excitement is intoxicating. But then you eat the bread. It's good, maybe even wonderful, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming as it did in your imagination. The peak of joy was in the waiting, not the having. This is one of the most surprising truths about your brain. Anticipation often releases more dopamine than the actual reward. The climb, the chase, the daydream, these light up the circuits of motivation far more vividly than the quiet reality of arrival. It is as if your brain prefers the horizon over the destination, the almost over the already. Think of a child on the night before a birthday. The excitement keeps them awake, eyes wide in the dark, imagining gifts, laughter, surprises. Yet the next day, when the wrapping paper is torn and the cake is eaten, the thrill begins to fade. The longing is stronger than the having. Your brain is wired this way because the drive to pursue keeps you alive. The satisfaction of arrival does not. This also explains why happiness never stays at a steady peak. Biologically, joy was designed as a spike, not a plateau. It rises to push you forward, then naturally falls so you keep seeking. Imagine happiness as a flame on a match. It burns bright, gives light, but is gone in seconds. If it burned forever, you would stop moving. The short flare ensures you search again, ensuring survival. Adding to this, research suggests that as much as half of your baseline level of happiness is inherited. This means that while life events can nudge you up or down, your mind tends to drift back toward a set point. Some people naturally hover higher, others lower, but none escape the gravitational pull of biology. The brain resists extremes, tugging you back toward your inherited balance. Philosophically, this truth is humbling. It suggests that happiness is not a treasure to be locked away, but a rhythm to be experienced. Peaks rise, valleys fall, and you return to the middle. To expect constant joy is to misunderstand its nature. It is meant to flicker, not to blaze without end. And yet, knowing this changes the way you might approach life. If anticipation itself carries so much of the brain's reward, then savoring the almost may be as important as the already. The planning of a trip, the dreaming of a project, the imagining of love, all these may hold as much joy as the experiences themselves. The journey is not just preparation, it is the experience. Still, this raises a deeper, almost unsettling question. If your brain is built to let happiness fade, if it even rewards imagination more than reality, then how can you ever hope to hold on to joy? Is there a way to step off this endless cycle of chase and let down, or must happiness always remain a fleeting guest in the house of your mind? That question opens the path to the next truth, the possibility of training your brain. Because while the cycles of adaptation, bias, and anticipation cannot be erased, they can be gently reshaped. The mind can be taught to linger longer with joy, to notice it more vividly, to resist the endless pull of comparison. The key lies in learning how to hack your attention, how to shift the spotlight from what fades to what endures. Checkpoint. Small risks feel huge, and comparison keeps rank on loop. Therefore, calm feels unsafe and joy shrinks. Up next, memories tilt, pain, pleasure, in storage. Imagine walking through a crowded city street. Cars honk, lights flash, strangers rush past. Your eyes dart from storefronts to screens, your ears catch fragments of conversations, and your brain is flooded with signals. In this chaos, attention is your only compass. Where you place it shapes your entire experience. If you fix on the noise and tension, your body tightens. If you notice the warmth of the sun on your skin or the rhythm of your breath, calm begins to settle. This is the secret doorway into reshaping happiness. You cannot stop your brain from adapting, from chasing, from scanning for threats, but you can choose where to place the spotlight of awareness. By directing attention toward the moments of safety, gratitude, and connection, you slowly retrain the brain to linger in spaces it would otherwise ignore. One simple practice is gratitude, not the fleeting thank yous of routine, but the deliberate act of pausing to notice what is already here. Neuroscientists studying gratitude have found that when people regularly recall things they are thankful for, their brain circuits of reward and calm light up more readily. It is as if gratitude teaches the mind to see abundance where it once saw only lack. Another tool is mindfulness, the practice of sitting with the present moment without judgment. When you breathe and watch thoughts come and go like passing clouds, you weaken the grip of the survival brain. The constant scanning slows, the restless searching softens. Mindfulness does not create happiness directly, but it creates space for happiness to be noticed before it slips away. Breaking free from social comparison is another form of attention training. Your brain evolved to measure your status in the tribe, but today that instinct is overwhelmed by the endless scroll of other people's lives. The more you compare, the more dissatisfaction grows. By gently shifting your focus from "what do they have" to "what do I value," you begin to reclaim joy from the claws of envy. Even the way you reward yourself can change the cycle. Instead of waiting for the finish line to feel good, you can train your brain to appreciate the process itself. Rewarding the steps along the way, not just the outcome, creates smaller, steadier releases of serotonin and oxytocin. These are the chemicals of trust, safety, and belonging, and they build a foundation of well-being far stronger than dopamine's restless spikes. Think of it like planting a garden. Dopamine is the sudden bloom of flowers, dazzling but brief. Serotonin and oxytocin are the soil and water, sustaining growth quietly, invisibly. If you only chase the flowers, you are left with fleeting bursts. But if you tend the soil, you create a ground where new blooms can rise again and again. Philosophically, this shift means redefining what it means to be happy. Instead of searching for grand peaks that always fade, you begin to notice the smaller lights, moments of kindness, breath, connection, gratitude. These do not roar like fireworks, they hum like steady lanterns, illuminating the path little by little. Practical steps can make this real. A few deep breaths before opening your phone, a pause to recall one thing you are grateful for before bed, a moment to truly savor the taste of food instead of rushing through it. These are not grand gestures, but they signal to your brain, this matters, this is worth holding. Over time they carve new grooves, teaching your mind to hold on to joy a little longer. And yet even these practices are not the full story, because while attention can shift your experience, your brain is still wired to slip back, to reset, to hunger, which raises a deeper, more unsettling question. What if you were never designed to be happy at all, but for something larger? What if happiness is not the final goal, but only a tool, an incentive on the way to something greater? Think of a pendulum, swinging back and forth. On one side, the promise of joy, on the other, the weight of dissatisfaction. Your brain does not let the pendulum stop in the middle for long. Just as you begin to savor a moment of happiness, it swings you forward into restlessness, anticipation, or even unease. This rhythm may seem cruel, but it is not accidental. It is the design of a mind that values movement over stillness. The truth is, your brain is not wired for permanent fulfillment. It is wired for cycles, bursts of pleasure, followed by resets. Imagine a campfire that flares high, then drops into embers. Unless more wood is added, the flames fade. In the same way, your nervous system keeps resetting your emotional state. pulling you out of joy so that you continue to seek, strive, and act. Researchers studying attention have found that the brain refreshes itself constantly, scanning for novelty. Even when you're absorbed in something pleasant, a part of your mind is already preparing to move on, asking, what's next? This reset is the reason why you can't replay the same song endlessly without it losing magic, or why the second bite of dessert is less satisfying than the first. It is your biology conserving energy, nudging you away from indulgence, urging you toward discovery. But these resets are not only chemical, they are also psychological. Just as dopamine spikes fade, your thoughts create their own resets. Is this all there is? What comes after? What if this doesn't last? These quiet questions tug at the edges of your joy, loosening it until it slips away. In storytelling terms, this creates the drama of your inner life. Just when you feel settled, another act begins. The mind is a playwright that refuses to let the curtain fall. And so, in the theater of your brain, happiness is never the final scene. It is always an interlude before the next twist. Philosophically, this reveals something profound. If you were designed for survival, not for happiness, then joy itself may never have been the end game. Perhaps joy was only ever a signal, a spark to guide behavior, not a destination to live in. Maybe your brain's deeper mission is to keep you in motion, not because motion ensures happiness, but because motion ensured survival. And yet knowing this does not have to bring despair. Instead, it opens a new way of framing your experience. If happiness was never meant to be permanent, then chasing permanence only fuels disappointment. But if happiness is seen as a visitor, a guest who arrives, teaches, and leaves, then its fleeting nature becomes part of its beauty. The glow of fireflies is precious precisely because it vanishes. Still, this understanding leaves an unanswered question hanging in the air like smoke. If you were not designed to be happy, what were you designed for? If joy is a spark and not a home, then what larger purpose does your restless brain serve? That question, unsettling yet deeply human, is what will guide us further, as we explore whether happiness was never the goal at all, but merely the signpost pointing toward something greater. Picture the end of a marathon. The crowd cheers, the ribbon breaks, and the runner collapses into triumph. For months, maybe years, they have been imagining this moment, visualizing the taste of victory, the relief of completion. But soon after, as the adrenaline fades, a strange emptiness creeps in. The body is exhausted, yes, but the mind is asking a deeper question. What now? This is the post-success crash, and it reveals one of the most perplexing realities of your brain. The same chemicals that carried you through the long nights of effort and the early mornings of discipline retreat, almost as soon as you achieve what they promised. Dopamine, the signal that once surged with each step toward the finish line, drops sharply the moment the prize is won. What felt like a fire in your chest now feels like ash. You might expect happiness to linger after success, but your brain quickly begins recalibrating. The achievement that once seemed monumental shrinks in scale, absorbed into the fabric of your daily life. What was once extraordinary becomes ordinary, as the survival brain insists on returning you to baseline. This return happens faster than most people realize. The job promotion, the dream house, the hard-earned diploma, each brings a rush, but soon becomes just another part of normal. Think of it like climbing a ladder, where each rung becomes the new ground. At first, standing on a higher step feels remarkable, but the longer you stand there, the more ordinary it feels. Soon your eyes lift to the next rung, and the climb resumes. The ladder is endless, and so is the cycle of striving. This is why people often experience arrival fallacy, the belief that once they reach a certain goal, they will finally feel fulfilled. The fallacy lies in forgetting that the brain does not allow arrival to last. The peak is temporary, and the descent into restlessness is inevitable. Celebrities and millionaires often serve as living examples of this truth. From the outside, it may seem impossible that someone with immense wealth and recognition could feel dissatisfied, yet many confess to emptiness, even despair. Their achievements delivered short-lived peaks, but the brain's cycle of adaptation pulled them back down. With each victory, the baseline reset. Without deeper sources of meaning, the crash became sharper. But the post-success crash is not only chemical, it is also existential. When you pursue a goal, your life is filled with structure, direction, anticipation. The chase gives you purpose. Once the chase ends, purpose momentarily disappears. It is like walking into a room that suddenly goes silent after hours of music. The absence is deafening. Without the rhythm of pursuit, you are left face to face with yourself, and the question, if not this, then what? Philosophically, this cycle forces us to reconsider how we define success. If each achievement only resets the ladder, then perhaps fulfillment cannot be found on the rungs themselves. Perhaps it lies in the act of climbing, in the relationships that hold you as you ascend, in the meaning you attach to the effort, in the way you grow through the struggle. The emptiness after triumph is not a flaw, it is an invitation. It asks you to look beyond the trophy, beyond the paycheck, beyond the applause. It whispers, what will you build that lasts after the high fades? Because success by itself was never meant to sustain you, it was meant to propel you towards something deeper. Still, one mystery lingers in the background. If success cannot guarantee well-being, if even the greatest victories dissolve into emptiness, then what is the brain truly after? What is the deeper rhythm beneath this endless chase? To answer that, we must look closer at the illusions of wealth and fame, and why they so often fail to bring the joy they promise. Imagine standing in a grand hall, walls covered with gold, every desire within reach. The shelves are lined with trophies, the accounts overflowing with wealth, your name etched in lights for all to see. From the outside it looks like the ultimate version of happiness, a life complete. Yet history, psychology, and testimony reveal a paradox. Those who have it all often speak of loneliness, anxiety, and discontent. Why? Because the human brain does not equate external success with internal fulfillment. Wealth and fame magnify life, but they do not rewrite the circuitry of happiness. The same mechanisms that make ordinary people restless after small victories also haunt those with extraordinary achievements. Dopamine still crashes after a win, adaptation still reduces novelty to routine, comparison still gnaws, now against a larger stage. Consider fame. To be recognized, admired, or adored sparks dopamine in the brain's reward circuits, like applause filling a theater, but the applause fades, and the silence that follows feels sharper than before. The more applause you receive, the louder the silence becomes when it stops. This is why so many performers, after reaching the heights of their careers, report feeling hollow once the spotlight turns away. The reward center adapts, demanding more attention, more praise, until nothing feels enough. Wealth carries its own illusions. At first, money can relieve stress. It can provide food, shelter, safety. But once basic needs are met, the curve flattens. More wealth does not equate to more joy. Instead, it often amplifies comparison, isolation, and the endless treadmill of wanting more. The luxurious becomes ordinary. The extraordinary house becomes simply home. Even abundance becomes baseline. There is also the burden of identity. Celebrities often describe the dissonance of being known not for who they truly are, but for the image others project onto them. The brain, hungry for authentic connection, struggles when every interaction is filtered through status. Oxytocin, the chemical of trust and closeness, thrives in intimacy, not in adoration from strangers. And so, despite millions of fans, many famous people feel profoundly alone. Think of it as building a palace on sand. From the outside, it looks indestructible, but the foundation, your brain's ancient wiring, remains the same. If it is tilted toward vigilance, adaptation, and comparison, no amount of wealth can change the tilt. The palace sinks in the same soil as the humble hut. Philosophers have long warned of this trap. Ancient texts speak of kings restless despite their riches, of emperors who sought peace but found only more hunger. The lesson repeats across centuries. External power cannot rewrite internal design. And yet, this truth does not mean wealth and fame are worthless. They can provide comfort, opportunity, the ability to shape the world, but when pursued as the sole source of happiness, they betray their promise. Because what the brain craves most deeply is not gold or applause, but meaning, safety, and belonging. This understanding shifts the question. If money and recognition fail to bring lasting joy, what does? If success leaves emptiness, where should the search turn? The answer lies in something subtler, something hidden in plain sight, the brain's surprising preference for imagination over reality, because sometimes it is not the achievement itself that feels good, but the anticipation leading up to it. Picture the night before a long-awaited event, a trip, a celebration, a reunion. You lie in bed imagining every detail, the laughter, the sights, the flavors. The anticipation makes your heart race, filling you with a joy so strong it almost feels real. Yet when the day finally arrives, the experience rarely matches the brilliance of your imagination. The excitement dulls, the moments pass quickly, and soon you are left wondering why reality never feels as radiant as the picture in your mind. This is one of the brain's strangest tricks. The circuits of reward often release more dopamine during anticipation than during the actual reward. It is as if your mind delights more in approaching than in arriving. This design, though puzzling, makes evolutionary sense. Anticipation kept your ancestors motivated to keep hunting, keep gathering, keep striving. If satisfaction lasted too long, they might have stopped moving. The brain, ever loyal to survival, made the chase sweeter than the catch. Think of a child waiting for a gift. In the days before, their imagination magnifies the surprise, their excitement nearly unbearable. But once the present is opened, the magic fades quickly, replaced by a quiet, almost disappointing normalcy. The brain's fire burns brightest in the almost, dimming once the already arrives. This explains why projects, dreams, and goals often feel more exhilarating while you're working toward them than when you finally achieve them. The book written, the race finished, the mountain climbed, all of them feel different than imagined. The summit is quieter, emptier, because the dopamine surge belonged to the climb, not the view. Now consider what this means for your happiness. If your brain is wired to crave anticipation, then joy itself is not a stable resting place, but a moving horizon. The brain builds happiness into the future, dangles it like fruit just out of reach, then moves it again once you've grasped it. Like a mirage in the desert, it keeps you walking. Philosophically, this truth reframes how you approach life. It suggests that happiness is not found only in outcomes, but in the energy of becoming. The dream itself may hold more joy than its realization. The longing, though uncomfortable, carries a richness that the moment of arrival cannot match. If you learn to savor anticipation, to treat it not as a burden but as a gift, you expand your capacity for joy. And yet, this discovery carries a heavier implication. Happiness may never be meant to last. It is not a permanent state, but a fleeting spark, designed by biology to fade. Your brain, by its very nature, ensures that joy is temporary. This may feel unfair, even cruel, but it also points to a deeper truth. The fading of joy is what drives you forward, what keeps you alive, what pushes you into new experiences and growth. Still, one more piece of the puzzle remains. If joy is designed to fade, and if your brain rewards anticipation more than arrival, then perhaps the question is not how to hold happiness forever, but how to live gracefully with its rhythm. To answer that, we must look closely at the biological reality that happiness is always meant to be a peak, a short-lived crest in the brain's waves, and understanding that impermanence may be the key to finding peace within it. Where are we now? Post-success crash, status nigh fulfillment, and anticipation peaks higher than reward, therefore arrival can feel empty. Next, the fading peak and your genetic set point, plus gratitude/mindfulness. Think of happiness not as a plateau you can climb onto and remain upon, but as a cresting wave. It rises with force, lifts you high, and then, inevitably, falls back into the sea. No matter how strong the wave, it cannot hold its form. This is how your brain has designed joy, as a peak, not a plane. Biologically, happiness functions like a signal flare. It shoots upward, catching your attention, driving behavior, reinforcing choices. But the flare was never intended to burn forever. It was meant to guide you briefly, then vanish so that you keep searching for the next spark. Evolution wrote this rhythm into your nervous system. Lasting happiness, in the biological sense, would have been maladaptive. A person content to rest endlessly might not have gathered food, secured shelter, or sought companionship. The fleeting nature of joy is encoded in the same circuits that bring you delight. Dopamine, as we've seen, surges with novelty and anticipation, but drops quickly after attainment. Serotonin and oxytocin bring steadier states, but even they are fragile, dependent on environment and connection. No chemical signature of happiness was ever designed for permanence. Each one is part of a rhythm, peaks and valleys, rises and falls. Think of it like fireworks versus candlelight. Dopamine is the firework, dazzling, explosive, breathtaking, and gone in an instant. Serotonin and oxytocin are candles, steadier, calmer, but still subject to winds, still requiring tending. None of them are eternal. All of them fade unless renewed. This biological truth can feel discouraging at first. If happiness always fades, then why chase it? Why strive? Why dream? Why celebrate? But perhaps the deeper wisdom lies not in resisting the rhythm, but in accepting it. The wave of joy is beautiful because it crests and falls. If it stayed high forever, it would cease to feel like joy at all. Philosophers have long echoed this insight. Ancient writers described pleasure as fleeting by nature, warning against clinging to it as a permanent state. Some compared it to shadows at dusk, real, beautiful, but always moving. The lesson is not to despair at its fading, but to recognize its impermanence as part of its value. This perspective shifts how you might experience joy. Instead of grasping at it with desperation, fearing its loss, you can savor it more fully while it lasts. A meal, a laugh, a sunrise becomes richer when you understand it is transient. Joy becomes not something you own but something you visit, like a guest whose stay is short but precious. And yet this knowledge opens a deeper puzzle. If happiness cannot last by design, then what about those who seem naturally more content than others? Why do some people return to balance more easily, while others dwell longer in shadows? The answer lies not only in experience, but in biology itself, inherited rhythms that set the baseline of your emotional life. Genetics, quietly and invisibly, plays a powerful role in determining where your pendulum of happiness rests. Imagine a garden. Two people plant the same seeds, water them with equal care, and give them the same sunlight. Yet one garden flourishes with ease, while the other struggles, producing fewer blooms. The difference lies not in the gardener's effort, but in the soil itself. In much the same way, your ability to experience happiness is partly shaped not by what you do, but by the inner soil of your biology, your genetic set point. Studies in psychology and neuroscience suggest that as much as half of your baseline level of happiness may be influenced by your genes. This means that before life experiences, before choices, before circumstances, your brain already has a natural resting level of well-being. Some people's soil is rich and responsive, allowing small joys to blossom easily. Others must tend more carefully, working harder to cultivate moments of contentment in soil less fertile. This does not mean your happiness is predetermined. Genes set a range, not a destiny. Imagine a thermostat that is programmed to hover around a certain temperature, but can still be adjusted slightly warmer or cooler by external forces. Your emotional thermostat works the same way. It drifts back toward its genetic set point, but life events, habits, and choices can nudge it in different directions. Consider two people who both win the lottery. At first, their joy spikes equally high. But within months, research shows each returns closer to their baseline. The naturally happier person drifts back toward contentment. The naturally gloomier person slides more quickly toward dissatisfaction. Likewise, those who face tragedy may initially plummet, but many eventually return to their inherited balance point. The brain seems determined to restore its default rhythm, no matter the external circumstances. Philosophically, this truth is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it reveals the limits of control. You cannot entirely rewire the soil you were given. Empowering because it clarifies the real work, not to chase permanent peaks, but to learn how to work with your soil, tending it carefully, enriching it where possible, cultivating what grows best in it. Think of it like sailing. You cannot choose the wind, but you can adjust the sails. Genetics provides the direction of the breeze, but your habits, your mindset, and your environment shape how you travel with it. Gratitude, connection, and mindfulness may not change the wind itself, but they change how your ship moves through it. This knowledge can also reduce self-blame. If you struggle to feel happy even when life is objectively good, it may not be because you are broken or ungrateful. It may be because your baseline is lower. And if you are someone who finds joy easily, it may not be solely your achievement, but the gift of a fortunate set point. But here lies the deeper question. If half of happiness is written in our biology, what about the other half? What practices, choices, and mindsets can expand the small window of influence you do have? To answer this, we must look beyond survival circuits and genetic constraints into the ways you can deliberately retrain your attention and chemistry. And here begins the art of hacking the brain, gentle practices that slowly shift the balance toward lasting well-being. Imagine you are walking through a forest after rain. The ground is soft, and each step leaves a mark in the soil. The more often you walk the same path, the deeper the trail becomes, until eventually your feet follow it without effort. This is how your brain works with attention. Each time you focus on something, you carve a pathway. Focus on worry, and the path of anxiety deepens. Focus on gratitude, and the path of appreciation grows clearer. Your brain is not a rigid machine. It is more like clay, soft enough to be reshaped even in adulthood. Neuroscientists call this ability plasticity, the power of neurons to rewire themselves based on repeated experiences. What this means for happiness is profound. Although your baseline may be influenced by genes, the direction of your attention can bend your experience toward greater well-being. Gratitude is one of the most effective tools for this reshaping. When you pause each day to reflect on what you value, a conversation, a moment of safety, even something as simple as the warmth of sunlight, your brain strengthens the circuits that notice the positive. Over time, this changes not only mood but perception. The mind becomes quicker to see abundance and slower to dwell on lack. Experiments show that people who practice gratitude regularly report higher satisfaction and lower stress, even when their circumstances do not change. The practice does not alter external reality, it alters the lens through which the brain views reality. It is like cleaning a window smudged with dust. The light outside was always there, but now it shines through more clearly. Another powerful practice is mindfulness. By resting your attention on the present moment, on your breath, your senses, the flow of thought without judgment, you quiet the brain's survival circuits. The restless scanning slows, the constant comparison softens. In that stillness, space opens for joy to be noticed before it slips away. Mindfulness does not erase problems, but it alters your relationship with them. Instead of being pulled into every thought, you watch them pass like clouds drifting across the sky. These practices show that happiness is not only an emotion, but also a skill, a way of training attention. Just as an athlete strengthens muscles through repetition, you strengthen well-being by returning again and again to gratitude, presence, and awareness. Philosophically, this reveals something striking. Happiness is not found but cultivated. It is less like stumbling upon treasure and more like tending a garden. The weeds of worry and comparison will always try to grow, but with steady attention, you can nourish the blooms of joy, and the act of tending itself, the daily choice to look for light, is already part of the reward. Still, this truth carries a challenge. Gratitude and mindfulness can shift the inner landscape, but they do not erase the brain's old habits. Comparison, vigilance, and adaptation continue to pull at you, which means the real art is not to fight those forces, but to balance them, to build new pathways without expecting the old ones to disappear. This balance leads us naturally to the next step, the practice of mindfulness, not only as a personal exercise, but as a way of rewiring survival instincts themselves. Because in the quiet of the present, the ancient alarm systems of the brain begin to loosen their grip, allowing you to breathe in a different kind of freedom. Picture yourself sitting beside a calm lake at dawn. The surface is perfectly still, reflecting the trees and sky above with such clarity that the boundary between water and air seems to dissolve. Then, a stone drops into the lake, ripples spread, distorting the reflection until it is no longer clear. This is what happens in your mind. Beneath the surface, peace exists, but the ripples of thought, worries, comparisons, regrets, distort it. Mindfulness is the act of noticing the ripples without chasing them, of letting them fade until the surface clears again. Your brain's survival wiring thrives on those ripples. For thousands of years, noticing every movement, every shadow, every hint of danger kept you alive. But in today's world, that same vigilance turns into endless loops of anxiety. You lie awake thinking of tomorrow's tasks, replaying yesterday's mistakes, projecting worst-case scenarios. The amygdala, that small alarm bell deep in your brain, keeps firing, even when no predator is near. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle by shifting how your brain processes experience. When you rest attention on your breath, on the sensations in your body, or on sounds around you, activity in the amygdala begins to decrease. At the same time, regions of the brain involved in calm and regulation strengthen. Over time, this practice literally reshapes neural pathways, teaching the mind to return more quickly to balance after stress. Think of mindfulness as walking out of a noisy marketplace into a quiet clearing. The marketplace doesn't disappear. You can still hear faint echoes, but the clearing gives you space to breathe. In this space, your nervous system recalibrates, heart rate slows, stress hormones decline, and the mind's restless scanning eases. You begin to see thoughts for what they are, ripples, not truths. Philosophically, mindfulness invites a radical shift. Instead of living in constant pursuit of happiness, you begin to notice the present moment as enough. The taste of food, the warmth of sunlight, the rise and fall of your breath, these become complete in themselves, not stepping stones toward a future reward. In this way, Mindfulness helps you step off the treadmill of anticipation and adaptation, even if only for brief moments. Importantly, mindfulness does not erase pain. It does not promise perpetual joy. What it offers is a different relationship to experience. Instead of fighting against unhappiness or clinging desperately to joy, you allow both to pass, like weather across the sky. You stop demanding that the sky be clear, and learn instead to find beauty in the shifting clouds. Practices can be simple. A few minutes of slow breathing before opening your phone, pausing to feel your feet on the ground while waiting in line, observing the thoughts that rush in at night without following them. Each of these small acts signals to your brain that it is safe to pause, that not every ripple requires reaction. Over time, the lake of your mind grows calmer, and peace becomes more accessible. And yet mindfulness is only part of the puzzle, because even as it soothes the survival brain, another force keeps pulling you into dissatisfaction, the urge to compare yourself with others. The instinct to measure your place in the tribe is ancient, and in the modern world it has been amplified beyond recognition. To truly free yourself from the barriers to happiness, you must learn how to navigate the trap of comparison. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that does not reflect your face, but the faces of everyone you know. Each time you look, the mirror shifts. Friends, colleagues, strangers, even people you've never met but glimpse through a screen, and without realizing it, you begin to measure yourself against them. Am I as successful as this one, as attractive as that one, as content as they appear? This is the ancient reflex of social comparison, alive and relentless in your modern life. For your ancestors, this instinct was vital. Around the fire, those who ranked lower in the group risked fewer resources, weaker protection, and exclusion. To notice where you stood, to strive for higher rank, was to increase your chances of survival. The brain learned to constantly measure, not out of vanity, but out of necessity. But today, the tribe is no longer a circle of a dozen faces. It is billions, amplified by glowing screens and endless images. Social media magnifies the mirror, presenting polished fragments of other people's lives. Your brain, still wired for a small tribe, now tries to measure itself against a world. The result is predictable: restlessness, envy, inadequacy. Neuroscience shows that comparison activates the same reward and threat circuits as tangible survival challenges. When you see someone appear to surpass you, whether in wealth, beauty, or success, your brain reacts as if you've lost ground in the tribe. Status feels like survival, even when it is no longer life or death. The emotional weight is real because the wiring is ancient. Think of comparison as a scale that is always tilted. No matter what you achieve, your brain can always find someone above you, making your triumphs feel smaller. Even billionaires feel envy when facing those with greater influence. The scale never balances. It only resets to remind you of what you lack. Philosophically, this reveals a profound trap. If happiness is measured by standing above others, it will always be fragile, because there will always be someone ahead, someone richer, someone younger, someone more admired. The ladder has no top rung. True contentment cannot come from winning the race of comparison, because the race never ends. Escaping this trap requires reframing. Instead of asking, "How do I compare?" the question shifts to, "What do I value?" By turning attention inward, you move from measuring status to cultivating meaning. Gratitude practices, mindfulness, and reflection weaken the grip of comparison by anchoring you in your own path rather than the shifting mirror of others. This shift is not about ignoring others, but about redefining the tribe. The brain craves belonging, but belonging does not require ranking. It requires connection. When you focus on cooperation rather than competition, oxytocin rises, strengthening bonds that bring steadier forms of joy than the fleeting highs of outpacing someone else. Think again of the mirror. At first, it reflects everyone else's face, but as you shift your attention, the reflections fade, until at last the glass shows your own, not in vanity, but in recognition. This is your life, your soil, your journey. Still, this raises a deeper question. If comparison and competition keep sabotaging joy, how can you find a way to reward yourself that does not depend on winning? The answer lies in changing not only what you strive for, but how you experience the striving itself. Instead of waiting for the finish line, you can learn to savor the steps along the way. Long-form recap. We mapped vigilance, adaptation, fear, comparison, memory's bias, and anticipation's trick. Therefore, chasing peaks won't hold joy. Final stretch. Process over goals. In Section 18, serotonin and oxytocin in Section 19, microhabits in Section 20, meaning in Section 21, rewriting the script in Section 22. Imagine a painter at work. Their canvas is still blank, the masterpiece not yet visible, but the act of brushing color onto white space already brings satisfaction. Stroke by stroke, something emerges, not perfection, but progress. This is the difference between living only for goals and finding joy in the process. One postpones happiness until the picture is complete, the other finds it in every brush of paint. Your brain, by default, is wired to chase the end result. Dopamine floods when you imagine the finish line, but as we've seen, it retreats quickly once you arrive. This is why victories often feel anticlimactic. The energy of pursuit collapses, leaving you hollow. But there is another way, learning to reward the process itself. When you savor each step, reading a single page instead of waiting to finish the book, lifting a weight instead of waiting for the perfect body, sharing a conversation instead of waiting for the relationship to be ideal, you trigger smaller, steadier bursts of satisfaction. These do not vanish as quickly because they are tied to ongoing action, not to a single fleeting moment of completion. Think of it like walking through a forest. If you focus only on reaching the other side, the journey feels long and frustrating. But if you notice the crunch of leaves beneath your feet, the shafts of sunlight breaking through branches, the rhythm of your breath, the walk itself becomes meaningful. The destination still matters, but it no longer defines the entire experience. Neuroscience supports this. Studies show that when people frame effort itself as rewarding, different brain circuits engage, circuits that sustain motivation without the sharp crashes of dopamine. Over time, this builds resilience, because satisfaction no longer depends on rare peaks of achievement but on daily rhythms of effort and growth. Philosophically, this changes the story of life. Instead of asking, "When will I be happy?" you begin to ask, "How can I live happily while becoming?" The journey ceases to be a waiting room for joy. It becomes the very stage where joy resides. This perspective does not mean abandoning goals. It means weaving joy into the path toward them. You still climb the mountain, but you find meaning in each step, each view, each pause to breathe. In doing so, the summit becomes not the single source of joy, but one moment in a larger tapestry. Small rituals can help anchor this shift. Pausing to celebrate progress instead of waiting for perfection. Keeping a journal that records daily effort, not just milestones. Rewarding yourself for practice, not just results. These are ways of teaching your brain to release satisfaction in smaller doses, building steadier foundations of well-being. Imagine life as music. If you listen only for the final note, the entire song feels like waiting. But if you learn to hear the beauty in each measure, each pause, each crescendo, then the music itself becomes the reward. The destination fades into the background, the journey becomes enough. Still, this raises another question. If success and striving cannot secure lasting joy on their own, then what can? What chemical melodies sustain happiness when dopamine's restless fire fades? To answer that, we must look at two quieter messengers within your brain, serotonin and oxytocin, the chemistry of calm and connection. Picture a firework exploding in the night sky. For a moment, the world is ablaze with color and sound. Then it fades, leaving only smoke. That is dopamine, brilliant, urgent, but fleeting. Now picture instead a campfire. Its flames are smaller, steadier, warming everyone who gathers near. This is serotonin and oxytocin, less spectacular, but far more enduring. While dopamine drives the chase, serotonin and oxytocin sustain well-being. Serotonin brings a sense of calm stability, the quiet assurance that things are safe, balanced, and meaningful. Oxytocin, often called the bonding chemical, flows in moments of trust and closeness. A hug, a shared laugh, the warmth of being understood, all release oxytocin, weaving invisible threads of connection. Your brain's survival design meant you needed both systems. Dopamine kept you moving forward, seeking resources and opportunities, but serotonin and oxytocin anchored you in community, ensuring you did not face dangers alone. Without them, the chase would never end, and survival would collapse into isolation. Think of serotonin as the solid ground beneath your feet, and oxytocin as the bridge that links you to others. Without the ground, you feel unstable. Without the bridge, you feel alone. Together, they provide the foundation for lasting forms of happiness, forms not based on fleeting novelty, but on stability and connection. Consider the difference between winning an award and sharing a meal with a close friend. The award may dazzle at first, but the glow fades quickly, leaving you restless for the next achievement. The meal, though quieter, nourishes something deeper. The laughter, the sense of belonging, the feeling of being part of something larger, all linger long after the plates are cleared. That lingering is the work of oxytocin and serotonin. Philosophically, this shift is crucial. If you build your life only on dopamine, you will forever chase horizons. But if you cultivate serotonin and oxytocin, you create a home within yourself and within your relationships. Joy then becomes less about climbing ladders and more about building roots. This is why many who seem ordinary by external standards, without great wealth or fame, report deeper satisfaction than those who have it all. Their lives may be rich in connection, trust, and community, feeding the pathways of oxytocin and serotonin. The grand peaks of achievement matter less than the steady warmth of belonging. And yet cultivating these quieter chemicals is not automatic. It requires practices of connection, listening with presence, sharing vulnerability, offering kindness, building trust. It also requires slowing down, because serotonin thrives not in frantic striving, but in steady rhythms, sleep, nourishment, reflection. In other words, it requires living in alignment with the body's natural cadence rather than against it. Think again of the campfire. You cannot demand it roar like fireworks. You must tend it patiently, adding wood, protecting it from wind, sitting near to feel its warmth. The reward is not a spectacular display, but a steady glow that lasts through the night. Still, this leads us to a final practical question. If serotonin and oxytocin sustain happiness, how can you cultivate them in the small moments of daily life? What simple habits can shift your brain away from the restless hunger of dopamine toward the quiet steadiness of connection and calm? Imagine holding a small stone in your hand. At first it feels insignificant, barely worth noticing. But if you place one stone on the ground each day, soon you have a path, a walkway leading somewhere meaningful. Happiness works the same way. It is rarely built in sudden leaps. It is laid down in small, steady habits that slowly reshape your brain's chemistry. The brain thrives on repetition. Each time you engage in a simple act that nurtures well-being, you reinforce neural circuits that favor serotonin and oxytocin. Over time, these micro-habits accumulate, carving new grooves of stability and joy. They are not grand gestures, but seeds planted daily. Consider movement. A short walk, a few stretches, even gentle breathing can release serotonin, calming the nervous system and improving mood. Your body is wired to reward motion, not only for survival, but for balance. Think of each step as telling your brain, you are safe, you are alive, you can rest now. Another micro-habit is touch. A hug, a handshake, or simply sitting close to someone you trust triggers oxytocin. Even brief, genuine moments of connection, eye contact, shared laughter, strengthen the invisible bonds that anchor happiness. These acts seem small, yet they are biological fuel for your sense of belonging. Nutrition and rest also play their part. Foods rich in tryptophan support serotonin production, while consistent sleep regulates the cycles that keep mood steady. Skipping these basics is like starving the soil of a garden. The flowers of joy cannot grow if the roots are not nourished. And then there are practices of the mind. Writing down 3 things you are grateful for each night strengthens attention to the positive. Pausing during the day to notice your breath shifts your awareness out of fear loops. Choosing to send a kind message, even a brief one, sparks oxytocin, not only in you but in the person who receives it. These are not dramatic acts. They are steady drops of water filling a well. Philosophically, these habits teach that happiness is not a prize to be won but a practice to be lived. The pursuit of grand peaks often disappoints because they fade so quickly, but the steady layering of small acts creates a foundation that does not vanish overnight. It is less like chasing lightning and more like tending a fire, adding twigs each day, watching the warmth grow. The beauty of micro-habits is that they do not demand perfection. Missing a day does not erase progress, just as one cloudy night does not undo the growth of a plant. The key is persistence, the gentle return, the willingness to keep laying stones. Over months and years, the path becomes visible. Still, even with these practices, the deeper question remains: if happiness is always fragile, always slipping, what is the mind ultimately built for? Perhaps the brain was never designed for bliss at all, but for something larger, something beyond momentary pleasure. This possibility opens the door to a profound reflection that you were not made simply to be happy, but to seek meaning. Imagine a candle burning in a dark room. Its light is fragile, flickering with each draft of air. You shield it with your hands, but you know it cannot burn forever. Happiness is like that candle, bright but impermanent. And yet what if the purpose of your mind was never to keep the flame alive endlessly, but to use its light to find something else, something larger, steadier, deeper, meaning? Across cultures and centuries, humans have wrestled with the limits of joy. Philosophers observed that chasing pleasure alone leads to emptiness. Spiritual traditions taught that contentment is found not in what you have, but in what you give yourself to. Modern science echoes this truth. People who anchor their lives in meaning through relationships, service, creativity, or faith report greater well-being than those who chase pleasure alone. From the brain's perspective, this makes sense. Dopamine peaks and crashes, pulling you through cycles of desire and letdown. Serotonin and oxytocin sustain you longer, but they too rise and fall. Meaning, however, is not just chemical, it is narrative. It is the story you tell yourself about why you are here, about what your efforts and struggles are for. The brain is not only a survival machine, it is also a storyteller. When the story is infused with purpose, even hardship feels different. Pain becomes bearable when it belongs to something greater. Think of a parent waking in the night to soothe a child. The act is exhausting, sometimes overwhelming, yet beneath the fatigue there is a profound sense of purpose. Or think of an artist who spends years on a work that may never bring wealth or fame. The daily grind could feel hollow, but the meaning attached to creation transforms it into fulfillment. Meaning does not erase suffering, it reframes it. Neuroscience shows that when people see purpose in what they endure, their stress responses shift. The same challenge that feels crushing without meaning can feel strengthening with it. The chemistry of the brain bends under the weight of the story you assign to your life. Philosophically, this is the deepest reframe of all. If happiness is fleeting by design, then perhaps the mind's true architecture is not built for happiness, but for significance, for the search for belonging, truth, creation, connection. Happiness may be the visitor, but meaning is the home. And yet this realization also brings responsibility. If meaning sustains more than pleasure, then you must ask, what story am I telling with my life? Is it only the story of chasing and consuming, or is it the story of contributing, of becoming, of weaving yourself into something beyond you? This shift does not reject happiness, it places it in context. Joy becomes a spark along the way, guiding you but never defining the journey. Meaning becomes the ground beneath your feet, steady even when sparks fade. Still, even this truth is not the end, because knowing your brain blocks happiness for survival and redirects you toward meaning is only part of the story. The final step is learning how to live with this wiring consciously, how to work with your brain instead of against it, transforming its limitations into a script for a deeper, richer life. Imagine you are holding a book. The pages are already written, filled with lines that shape your thoughts, your emotions, your habits. This book is your brain's script, crafted over millions of years of evolution. Its chapters tell you to scan for danger, to chase reward, to let joy slip so you keep moving. For most of your life, you read this book unconsciously, believing its story to be the only one possible. But what if you could take the pen into your own hand? What if you could rewrite parts of the script, not erasing its ancient wisdom, but adding new passages that bring you closer to the life you long for? This is the final truth of why your brain blocks happiness. It is not to punish you, but to protect you. Your mind was never designed for constant bliss. It was designed for survival. It pulls you away from joy, not because joy is unworthy, but because vigilance kept your ancestors alive. But now, survival is not your only task. You live in a world where safety is more accessible, where meaning can be pursued, where joy can be cultivated deliberately. This gives you a chance your ancestors never had, to collaborate with your brain rather than fight against it. Working with your brain begins with awareness. When joy fades after achievement, you can remind yourself, this is biology, not failure. When comparison creeps in, you can notice, this is instinct, not truth. When fear magnifies shadows, you can pause and ask, is this danger real, or just an echo of ancient wiring? Each recognition loosens the grip of the old script, creating space for a new response. From there you can nurture the practices that reshape your chemistry, gratitude to highlight abundance, mindfulness to calm the restless scan, connection to release oxytocin, routines to steady serotonin. Each practice is like adding a new line to the book, slowly weaving a parallel story within the one biology wrote. Philosophically, this is the essence of freedom, not to erase your brain's design, but to live wisely within it. You cannot stop waves from rising and falling, but you can learn to surf. You cannot prevent joy from fading, but you can savor it while it lasts, and build meaning in its absence. You cannot silence the survival brain, but you can give equal voice to the parts of you that seek purpose, connection, and peace. The arc of this journey takes you from frustration, why does my brain sabotage me, to understanding my brain is protecting me, to empowerment, I can work with my brain, not against it. This shift is not about escaping the script, but about becoming its co-author. And so, the next time happiness fades, you can meet it with gentleness rather than despair. You can whisper to yourself, my brain is doing its ancient work, but I am here now, and I can choose how to respond. In that choice lies the quiet revolution, transforming a survival machine into an instrument of meaning. Your brain does not block happiness to make you suffer. It does it because its mission was never happiness at all. Its mission was to keep you alive. But now, with awareness, you can give it a new mission, not just survival, but a life worth living.